Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, what is up? What is good? The king of lightning here today, bringing you guys and gals Hunter x Hunter, the glory that is Togashi Yoshihiro's Hunter x Hunter manga chapter 363 and 364 review. Now, there is a slight dilemma, and that dilemma is time, my friends, time. Because this video may be a very long video. So let's just see how this goes. I don't want to spend too much time talking about what ifs. Let's just dive headfirst into this chapter of Hunter x Hunter. We'll start chapter 363, the pacing, the story, then finally the character, and the same thing for chapter 364 afterwards. So, first things first, the pacing of chapter 363. And for this chapter, we have 6 parts for the pacing. Number 1 is the third prince of Cockaigne, Zhang, talking to his bodyguards about what's going on with Camp Woble, and how Camp Woble, they have lost most of their bodyguards, with the exception of the 2 hunters, Bill and Kurapika. Now, Zhang does inquire as to why that's the case, but ultimately, the conversation shifts towards Nen Beast when one of the bodyguards brings it up. Zhang, of course, is curious about what Nen Beast are, and they're trying to get more info on that. So that is part 1 of the pacing. Number 2 is that we see a layout of the VVIP area where the princes reside. Number 3 is initially the second prince of Cockaigne, Camilla, talks to the king, and then later on in comes Benjamin, and then that winds up being its whole thing, and then soon Camilla leaves, and then afterwards Benjamin leaves as well. So that is part 3 of the pacing. Part 4 of the pacing, we shift over to dialogue, mainly dialogue, between the first prince Benjamin and the captain of the private troops, Balsal Miko. And this dialogue is mainly talking about their current situation and their next move, which we will most definitely get into later on this review. Number 5 is after some dialogue between Benjamin and Balsal Miko, they do have a plan in place, and he calls in the rest of the private troops. And then number 6 is the private troops enacting on the mission that Benjamin and Balsal Miko have sent them to do. So those are the 6 parts when it comes to pacing of this chapter. That's hefty when it comes to parts. You have 6 parts. And truth be told, there are more parts, subparts within part 6. As the private troops are going out completing their mission, we do see what's going on with Zhang, what's going on with Camilla, what's going on with the 4th prince, and then we end off with one of the bodyguards going to where Kurapika and Camp Woble are. You can kind of count those as individual parts, but at the same time, they're just sub-parts of the greater overall mission that the private troops have been given by the first prince, Benjamin. But for the sake of the pacing, and for the sake of this chapter review, I'll just keep it as 1 part, the 6 parts. So again, we have 6 parts to this chapter when it comes to pacing / structure. Now, moving on to the hefty stuff, the meat. Let's start with the story. Now, number 1 for story is going to be the VVIP area and how it's laid out. We see that the princes, they all live within like the same area, the VVIP area. And then near the areas, you have like the VVIP residential entertainment area. You have like the banquet hall. You have where the soldiers and associates, where their living quarters are, and how they're pretty much like surrounding the VVIP area where the princes are. There are about 14 different sections. You have 7 per column, and then we have a layout as the residence areas themselves, where we see pretty much where the bathroom is, where the kitchen is, where they sleep. So essentially, we're getting a layout of the area where most of this is going to be taking place, most of this chaos. So us seeing a layout of the royal residential area gives us more insight as to how things may or may not play out. Now, number 2 is the second prince of Cockaigne, Camilla. She is talking to the king of Cockaigne, and she wants verification on what the word dropped out means when it comes to this war between the princes. And in her mind, what she wants is for dropped out to mean biological death, because the way you interpret being dropped out of the secession war, you can interpret that in many different ways. However, the king of Cockaigne, he explains to her that you're interpreting being eliminated from the competition, being eliminated from the war in your own way. How you interpret that is also a part of the war. So when it comes to, let's say, the situation involving Hulkenberg in a sense has dropped out. However, it was stated previously that as long as one prince who is actually a prince of Cockaigne remains alive, that will bring illegitimacy to the throne. At least something along those lines was stated before previously. So being dropped out, being eliminated from this war can mean and can be many different things aside from biological death. Essentially, what I think the King of Cockaigne is saying is, as long as someone has a legitimate right to be the King of Cockaigne, they are still a part of the succession war. So being dead would no longer give you the right to be king, because you're dead. But there are several ways that could also manifest as well. So let's say, for example, one of the princes is deemed to be a criminal for X, Y, and Z reason. Well, that prince may lose the right to be king because, let's say, given Cockaigne law, they are removed the privileges of royalty once they have committed a crime, and that's proven to be the case. And therefore, they have been eliminated from the war. So they're not dead, but they lose the right to be king. So there are many ways that you can interpret that, but from a base level, I think that's what he's trying to get at. Number 3, after the confrontation between Benjamin and Camilla, and they're having this confrontation in front of the King of Cockaigne, Camilla has already left, and Benjamin leaves too. And Benjamin is in like pure blood-soaked mode. Like, he is just the embodiment of rage. We see him walking about. He is commanding that he have the 4th prince brought to him, like, immediately, so he can kill him himself. It's like, dude, what? It's crazy. And all the while, he is very convinced that they all just have to die. Just kill them all right now, no time wasted. Because Camilla, after showing us quite a bit of her character and how she operates and how she thinks, Benjamin just was not having it at all. So in his mind, the only way to end it is to end it quickly by killing them all right here, right now. So Benjamin immediately begins to take action right after talking to the King of Cockaigne. Number 5, as Benjamin is taking action and he is talking to Balsamico, the captain of the private troops, Balsamico informs Benjamin of the Nen beast. And this brings up a few things, like, for example, Benjamin, he knows Nen, but we'll get to that for his character. Benjamin cannot see the Nen beast, even though he knows Nen. And this is very important because right now we have some princes, like the 4th prince, trying to learn Nen. And it's probably the case that none of the princes, at least while the succession war is taking place, none of the princes can see the Nen beast of the other princes or their own Nen beast, even if they themselves know Nen. Which means that the Nen beasts truly have to act independently to protect their host from outside forces. So the 4th prince, if he does learn Nen, will not be able to manipulate his Nen beast because that will go against the rules that have been established for the war. And that was probably done when they did the whole jar ceremony. So Balsamico is theorizing about that and several different things as to the reasons why Benjamin can't see the Nen beast. But that is very important because now we know that even though Benjamin knows Nen, and that puts him at an advantage, there is also some mitigation there because he himself cannot use / manipulate his Nen beast to do X, Y, and Z and take out this prince, that prince, and that prince. He just can't do that. The next thing for story is after Benjamin and the captain of the private troops, Balsamico, talk about various things, their plan of action, their current situation at the moment when it comes to the announcement that Kirby made on the emergency lines and how that has impeded their progress because they have the advantage of Nen. None of the princes, as far as we know, knew what Nen even was, except for apparently Benjamin and company. Benjamin and his camp had the advantage of Nen, but Kurapika ruined that for them. But that does not mean that Benjamin is going to stop. So Benjamin, he summons the rest of his private troops, and he tells them to act as royal family bodyguards. And as they act as royal family bodyguards, these guys are going to report to Benjamin everything they see. When it comes to the Nen beast, when it comes to hunter abilities, when it comes to the other prince's actions, etc. Their mission is to give Benjamin as much intel as possible. And if they need to, if they see it necessary, to use their right of self-defense to kill. Benjamin made swift gains. Benjamin wasted no time at all. Immediately, private troops, they have the right, which we'll get to later, they have the right to essentially just walk into enemy territory and spy on them, like right then and there, up front. Because most of the princes are fully aware that Benjamin has sent these guys as spies. Clearly, because it's pretty obvious. But they have that right. And Benjamin is using his status to try and gain massive ground in this war. And finally, number 6 for story, most of the princes are fully aware that Benjamin has sent these guys in as spies. And most of the princes are taking action, at least from the ones we see. like the third prince Zhang, like the second prince Camilla, like the fourth prince, they are taking some action to go against these quote-unquote royal bodyguards, which ultimately are just spies for Benjamin. However, when it comes to Camp Global, apparently this particular bodyguard has his own mission. He immediately walks in to Camp Global territory using the self-defense method, and he had already taken out one of the servants. So it is at that point in time that Kurapika and Bill and company have realized that this guy is not a bodyguard, he's an assassin to take them out. And now we move on to the character portion, the character segment of this chapter. And for this segment, we have 6 parts as well. So the character portion has 6 parts. The story has 6 parts. The pacing has 6 parts. I'm seeing 3 6s. Hail Satan, hail Satan. Oh my god. 6 parts for the character. I'm wasting time, goddammit. So the first thing for character is going to be Camilla. Now, Camilla, the second prince of Cockaigne, apparently likes to refer to herself in third person. She calls herself Cammy, not I or me, no. She says Cammy, so she refers to herself in third person, but that's not the main meat when it comes to her character portion here. Camilla believes, apparently with all earnesty, that everyone in the world, Sekai Iwo, everyone in the world should act the way she wants them to act. And if that isn't brazen enough for you, she is very open, in front of her father as well, that she wants the other princes to flat out die. Quote unquote, this is what Camilla wants every prince to think about her. Camilla should be king, so I should just die. Camilla, clearly her psyche is warped in many ways. God knows the darkness that she has in her heart. I mean, woo! Every person should act the way I want them to act. And yes, every prince should die but me. In her mind, the world is unfair, and only she, Camilla the Great, only she can change it. So everyone step aside and die so I can change the world for the better and make it fair by having everyone do what I want them to do. When you have her Nen Beast react to what she was thinking and what she was saying, it's like, okay, yeah, Camilla is, you can tell that Camilla is far more deadly than we first give her credit for. Number 2 of the character portion of this chapter, and that is our dear friend Benny Boy, aka Benjamin. Now, Benjamin, Benny Boy, apparently knows Nen, which was surprising. After he talks to the King of Cockaigne and says that he will do what he has to do to uphold the pride of the nation and blah, blah, blah. Though that blah, blah, blah does show that he is fairly loyal to the nation of Cockaigne. Either way, we see him running down a hall. He's like ripping his shirt off and we see a Nen aura around him. First of all, the Superman rip, I don't know. That's number 1. Number 2, Nen aura. At this point in time, as far as we know, he is the only prince that knows Nen. We don't know to what degree he knows Nen, but nonetheless, he knows it. And Benjamin was, in fact, going to use Nen against the other princes. But again, Kurapika, when he used the channels to talk to everybody about the Nen Beast, he did disrupt the plans of the first prince's camp, and as a result, they had to change gears. Now, number 3 for character is going to be Balsal Miko. He is the captain of the private troops of the first prince, Benjamin. Essentially, what it all is, what it boils down to, is that Balsal Miko is a very intelligent dude, and his powers of deduction are fairly strong. Now, how I get that is from his dialogue between him and Benjamin, and there are some things there that I want to note. So number 1, he deduced, I think very clearly, that there were certain rules in place that prevented Benjamin from seeing the Nen Beast, knowing that these rules somehow tied into the ceremony involving the jar. Number 2, he's able to keep the first prince Benjamin. We saw him, like, he was just in pure rage, almost berserker mode. Like, he was ready to rip heads off and just puncture people's chest. He was ready to kill. But Balsal Miko was able to calm him down by clearly and effectively explaining the situation at hand. Subpart part 3 is him obviously stating that Benjamin not being able to see his Nen Beast and knowing what it can do puts him at a disadvantage, a clear disadvantage, when it comes to other Nen Beasts as well. So not only does he not know, Benjamin not know what his Nen Beast is going to do, but then he also can't predict the powers and the actions of the other Nen Beasts for the other princes. Then on top of that, number 4, subpart part 4, he mentions how they have lost their advantage when it comes to Nen. However, he is also fully aware that the hunters seem to be talking and working with the princes now more often, and as a result, some of the princes are trying to learn Nen, or trying to learn more about Nen, so they can have certain measures against the Nen Beast and so on and so forth. However, when it comes to the hunters specifically, their main mission is not to defend the princes. Their main mission is to go to the Dark Continent. Specifically, that's their main goal, as far as he's aware at the very least. But he's kind of right. That is the main MO of most of the hunters. Not all, but most of the hunters. And on top of that, even though they probably know Nen better than the private troops of Benjamin, the private troops of Benjamin have the advantage of information and how the Cockaigne system works. They have the advantage of information at their disposal, and they, the first camp, can use that advantage of insight and information against the hunters if they need to. And then finally, subpart number 5 for Balsamico is that he was able to deduce that the main reason why Kurapika used the emergency channel in the first place was to create a stalemate between the princes. Even Camp Benjamin, who know Nen, they now have to change their plans because now all the princes are aware of Nen and Nen Beast. So with those 5 subparts, we can clearly see that Balsamico is someone of high intelligence, someone that has a high level of deduction and insight on various matters. So the guy is impressive. Now, number 4 for character is going to be Benny Boy Benjamin. And Benjamin's character is clearly described to us by Balsamico, who honestly believes that Benjamin is someone that is appropriate to be the future king of Cockaigne. But he explains how Benjamin, he's not stupid. He likes to take the quote-unquote shortest route possible to a situation. And that is probably due to his very impulsive nature. Essentially speaking, the shortest route to solve the issue when it comes to the princes is kill the princess. And that's why he was like, just bring him to me so I can kill him right here. However, when you slow down Benny Boy and you clearly give him all the info that he needs to perceive a situation at hand, Benjamin has no problem changing course or making an appropriate decision on a situation once he understands more about the situation at hand. He can change to the environment around him if he knows what's going on, which is why instead of just rushing out there and trying to grab the 4th prince, he instead summons all the private troops and he rechanges focus entirely. So Benjamin is no fool, he's not stupid. He's just very impulsive, and that impulsive nature, honest to God, is probably the reason why he's gonna get killed at some point later on. Number 5 is the reason why the private troops of Benjamin can also act as royal bodyguards for the other princes, because Benjamin is the supreme vice counselor of the nation's military. So he and his troops have that right to act as royal bodyguards on the spot. And number 6, the last part of the character for this chapter, is the 5th prince. Her name, Tube something, I forgot her name. Basically, she's smart enough to know that Kurapika was trying to bring this war to a stalemate, and she wants info on Kurapika. So right now, it seems like her focus has shifted directly towards Kurapika, and that may lead to something, because in the next chapter, it appears that it is leading to something, potentially. We'll go to that some point later on in the review. So that being said, guys and gals, that is the chapter at hand. When it comes to the pacing of the chapter, overall, it's good. When it comes to the story progression of the chapter, there are a few things there that are fairly important for the overall arc. Not the story, for the overall arc. Benjamin on the move, getting a greater sense of the VVIP area, but most importantly, I would argue, is the King of Cockaigne talking about what it means to be dropped out of the Secession War. That, I think, is crucial, because death is not the only answer. Clearly, I mean, that is clearly the case here. Death is not the only answer. And the amazing part here is how the princes are going to interpret that in the future of this arc, and how their interpretation will affect the other princes as well. So essentially, the King of Cockaigne opened up a whole new realm of possibility when it comes to this war by just that one statement. So when it comes to story, I would say it's a good plus. Finally, when it comes to the character, mainly you have Benjamin, you have Camilla, and then you have, again, the captain of the private troops, Balsamico. So when it comes to this chapter overall, I'm gonna give this chapter a good to good plus, which basically is a 7.25 out of 10. Now moving on to chapter 364. Now when it comes to chapter 364, the main thing here, I would argue easy, is the character stuff for Kurapika. That is going to be hefty, my friends. Hefty. But before we get to that, as usual, the pacing, the story, and the character. So first and foremost, the pacing of the chapter. This part of the chapter review has 4 parts to it, not 6. So there's gonna be no 666 hail saying none of that stuff. It's gonna be 4 parts for the pacing of this chapter. Number 1 is that Kurapika and Bill have to deal with the royal bodyguard, quote unquote, actually an assassin sent over by First Prince Benjamin, who actually killed the servant that answered the door and used that as a means of defending himself. Number 2 is after Kurapika and Bill have subdued this assassin, Kurapika and Oito have some dialogue, and as Kurapika was going to restrain him, the assassin, whose name is Vincent, kills himself with poison. Apparently Vincent had like a poison capsule, like I think some cyanide or something of the sort, stuck in like his back tooth. So the assassins, if they need to, the bodyguards, they need to, they can kill themselves on the spot. Number 3 is right after Kurapika destroys the listening device that was in Vincent's ear, Benjamin and Balsamico, they talk to themselves about what potentially Kurapika's powers may be, what's the course of action at this point in time, and what Benjamin ultimately does is send another royal bodyguard, quote unquote royal bodyguard, assassin to Camp Wobble. And number 4, the last part of the pacing / chapter structure, is Kurapika and company are about to split up and search the room for a small creature, like an insect, for Oito to control using the little eye ability. However, the phone rings and the only servant left picks up the phone. And apparently they have 3 messages from 3 different princes, and the switchboard operator on the phone has these messages on hold. And before Kurapika and company can really decide which prince to talk to, the second royal bodyguard from the first prince, Prince Benjamin, makes his way over to the front of the living quarters, rings the doorbell, he wants in. So that's where the chapter ends off, and that is the overall pacing / chapter structure of this chapter. Once again, 4 parts to it. Now we get on to the story section of this chapter, and the story section has 6 parts to it. Now, number 1 for story is going to be the assassin Vincent that was sent over to Camp Wobble by Camp Benjamin. Kurapika is able to deduce the MO of this guy. He's an assassin, yes, but he's not an assassin for Queen Oito and Wobble per se, but he's an assassin for mainly the hunters, mainly Kurapika and Bill. Vincent already kills 1 servant when he enters the room, when she answered the door, and he used her as a means of self-defense. According to Kurapika, he believes that Vincent's MO is to make room for the second assassin, because the second assassin would be the one to actually kill Oito, Wobble, and the last remaining servant. And then what could be the case is that they point the finger at the servant because she was the last remaining servant, and she decides to kill Oito and Wobble. So when the second assassin comes in there and kills them, they could blame the servant. So the servant killed the queen, killed the prince, and killed herself. That's the MO that Vincent is trying to create here. In order to do so, he has to get rid of the hunters, the obstacles that are in his way. And again, in this case, Bill and Kurapika. That motive may still be the intent of Camp Benjamin, to not actually kill Oito and Wobble themselves the first go-round, but to kill Kurapika and Bill and making way for another assassin, regardless if that assassin is from Camp Benjamin or not. Regardless if that assassin, I'll say it again, is from Camp Benjamin or not. Number 2 for story is Kurapika showing the remnants of Camp Wobble. So Bill, the 1 servant, Queen Oito, and then Wobble himself, his scarlet eyes. That threw me off. That really did throw me off, because I thought, wait a second, hold on. keep the Scarlet Eyes on the DL, the massive DL, because your intent is the 4th prince. Now, when it comes to Bill, I would hope that you could trust Bill. All right, fine. Like, maybe you can, all right? Like, he seems nice enough, fair enough. Oito, yes, you can. When it comes to Wobo, he's a baby. It is what is there. The other servant, though, the last remaining servant, I think that's what she is. You can't trust her. What? So, Kurapika taking out his contacts, which, by the way, given anime eyes, must be huge contacts. Like, this big, just... Whatever, man. It's important for the story, because now Camp Wobble are fully aware that Kurapika has these scarlet eyes. And even though you can trust most of them, you can't trust all of them, and in my personal opinion, let's say a Nen Beast has an ability to extract information. They can get that intel potentially from not just the servant, but also from Queen Oito and Bill as well. So, like, I don't see that being a good move. I really don't. But he did. Now, number 3 for story, this clearly involves Kurapika's character, but again, we'll save that for last. Kurapika transfers over the ability Little Eye and the Stealth Dolphin to Oito by using the steel chain on his index finger and, like, jabbing it in, like, I think her forearm or something of the sort. And then, because he transferred the ability of Little Eye over to Queen Oito, he is able to steal the air blow ability of Vincent the Assassin as him and Bill take him on. So the fact that he transferred over the ability Little Eye is big in of itself. Then on top of that, he's taken another ability because he transferred over the ability of Little Eye to Queen Oito. And the air blow itself is probably going to be useful in some way, shape, or form. I don't doubt it. And actually, now that I think about it, maybe the reason why Kurapika had to take off the contacts was because he transferred the ability of Little Eye to Queen Oito. Okay, we'll get to that when it comes to the character part, so let's continue when it comes to the story. Number 4 for story ties in closely to what I said before when it came to the pacing, and that is Vincent, he kills himself, and he had a listening device in his ear. So it looks like all of the private bodyguards of Benjamin have listening devices in their ear. They have secret comms, so the bodyguards don't have to directly report to Boss Miko. He can listen in on what's going on. Of course, he can't see, but at least he can listen. And on top of that, after him and Benjamin talk about their next move and what abilities Kurapika may or may not have and how Vincent was subdued, Benjamin sends over the other assassin to Kurapika's location. His name is like Baby or like Bambi something, whatever his name is. Not important. They send over at least not yet. He's not relevant yet. That being said, Benjamin sends him over, but he does change the mission at hand. Because they have heard the struggle between Vincent, Kurapika, and Bill, and how Vincent was subdued so quickly after his intentions were fully revealed, it looks like Benjamin has given this new assassin, this new royal bodyguard guy, a new mission. So actually, he may not even be an assassin. His main mission now may just be to monitor what's going on here, just to watch Kurapika and company. Because it is clear that Vincent was sent there with the intent of killing. This guy could now be sent with the intent of just pure recon. So we'll see how that plays out. Now, number 5 for story, once again, ties heavily into the pacing, wherein which Kurapika and company, they are trying to find a bug so Oito can use that ability. They cannot wait till the next banquet, because during the next banquet, there's going to be a hamster that the 13th prince always has with him. Unfortunately, Kurapika cannot afford to wait that long. And once again, as they are about to split apart, we have the phone ring, and then they get messages from 3 princes. One from the 1st prince, Benjamin, one from the 3rd prince, Zhang, and one from the 5th prince, Tube something, whatever her name is. Now, in the previous chapter, I mentioned how Tube, she wanted info on Kurapika because she knew that Kurapika was trying to bring us to a stalemate. And we know that her intention is to take out the top 3 princes, Benjamin, Zhang, and Camilla. And on top of that, the 5th prince has now made an alliance with the 4th prince, potentially. And we also know that the 7th prince or the 6th prince, I forgot which prince it was. It's the prince that likes to smoke a lot. He is targeting the 5th prince. So there are a few things revolving around the 5th prince, Tube something. And according to Queen Oito, you would normally take the call of the 1st prince first. However, the first call that they take, the switchboard operator will notify the other princes that Camp Wobble is taking a call of, let's say, the first prince or the third prince or the fifth prince. They will notify the other princes that Camp Boba is taking a call from this prince at the moment. And so if they try and talk to the other camps afterwards, the other camps will assume that they are against them because they have sided with another prince. As a result, this one call, whoever message they choose to respond to, they gain maybe one ally, but they gain two enemies in the process. And my guess here, it could be Zhang. I highly, highly doubt it's gonna be Benjamin. I really do. My guess here is it's going to be the fifth prince. The fifth prince specifically has ties, or will soon have ties, to the fourth prince. And the fourth prince is Kurapika's target. Granted, Benjamin is also targeting the fourth prince as well, mainly. However, Benjamin and his guards and his men will not be able to get close to the fourth prince without the fourth prince being on guard, on high guard. When it comes to the fifth prince, they formed a pseudo-alliance, and that is going to be solidified next week during the next banquet. So if she stays alive, that means that the fourth prince is going to be far less on guard near her than he is with Benjamin, which will give Kurapika, potentially, if they're out with the fifth prince, more of a chance, more of a shot to get in contact and to get the curtain eyes that he wants from the fourth prince. The fifth prince and Camp Wobble, they may form an alliance. Another canon is Zhang, but that one I don't really see any benefit to Kurapika and company at the moment. I really don't. That being said, we move on to part 6 of the story, where part 6 of the story is once again the new bodyguard that Benjamin sent over. He has arrived at Camp Wobble headquarters. So that is it when it comes to the story portion of this chapter. And now we get on to the character section of the chapter, which only has 2 parts. However, one part is fairly lengthy, and that is the Kurapika segment of the character. So there are a few subparts when it comes to Kurapika's section. But before I get to Kurapika, let me talk about Bill. And he is number 2 for characterization in this chapter. Now, when Kurapika is giving over the ability of Little Eye to Queen Oito, the assassin Vincent was kind of confused as to what was going on. And during that time, Bill charged at Vincent, like from the side, from the left-hand side, like he hugged the wall. And as he was doing so, he had a stance where he was guarding his vitals with his forearm and his knee. And as he was rushing towards Vincent, Vincent shoots bullets at Bill, but Bill is able to negate the damage from the bullets by using that stance as well as using Nen. So when it comes from a combat standpoint, Bill, his Nen ability is strong enough to where it can at least mitigate the damage of bullets. I don't think he can completely like block bullets like Uvogan could, but he can mitigate the damage from the bullets. And on top of that, he has enough technique to where he can use a stance to block his vitals from any oncoming projectiles like bullets. So we're getting a bit of combat ability when it comes to Bill. Now that we have the cherry, let's start making the cake, and that cake is Kurapika. So when it comes to character, the main thing here for Kurapika is learning more about the index finger ability as well as Emperor Time. So now we get to the subparts. Subpart 1. Kurapika can use the steel chain of his index finger, send it into a person's body, like on their forearm or something. And when he's transferring over an ability, he can communicate with that person mentally. So he's able to communicate with Oito mentally as he's transferring over the power of Little Eye. Subpart 2, he's transferring over the ability that he has taken with the Stealth Dolphin, which is activated via Emperor Time, and he's transferring that ability over to Queen Oito, the ability of Little Eye. So once again, Kurapika can transfer over an ability that he has taken with the Stealth Dolphin to another person when he injects a person with the steel chain. Subpart part 3. Once he injects an ability that he's taken from one person to another person via the Stealth Dolphin, that leaves the steel chain free to take another Nen ability. Like, it just, he sounds broken. Like, Kurapika with Emperor Time sounds broken. So he can inject someone else with an ability that he takes from someone, like the Little Eye. And then he can take another ability, because the ability within the steel chain, within the Stealth Dolphin, is now transferred over to another person. So the steel chain itself is free to take another ability in the syringe. It is like, dog. Like, whoa, Kurapika. All right. So that's subpart part 3. Subpart part 4, very briefly, is the Stealth Dolphin actually gives Kurapika advice from time to time, which is interesting. Almost as if like it has a mind of its own. You know, actually it probably does. Now I think about it, the stealth dolphin probably shares a lot in common with the Nen beast of the princess. It is a Nen creature, and it talks, and it gave Kurapika some advice, though Kurapika's going against it, which is fine. But the fact that it can do that, I found to be very intriguing. I thought that it was purely automated, like it wouldn't try and give any advice or anything of the sort, but clearly it did. And finally, subpart part 5, the main meat of the character portion of this chapter. Emperor Time has a huge drawback that we have not known until today, and it's like, dog, what? While activated, every second shortens its user's lifespan by 1 hour. Kurapika. While activated, every second of Emperor Time shortens the user's lifespan. The lifespan by 1 hour. When I think about that, the first thing I'm thinking of is Chairman Netero. Chairman Netero lived for quite a long time. Like, he was still kicking, and he was like 120 some odd. Oh yeah, still kicking. The man was a goddamn force of nature, still kicking. The man was a force of nature, like 120 some odd. Or like 100 plus at the very least. So hunters have an extended lifespan because the life force of the hunter is not just seething out, like they can contain inside themselves via Nen control. However, even though hunters have prolonged lives, the fact that Emperor Time itself still takes away 1 hour for 1 second of usage that is some scary stuff. And that's the main reason why Kurapika can't wait till the next banquet. Because while the stealth dolphin is with Queen Oito, Emperor Time must stay active. So until they find a small creature to use Little Eye on, Emperor Time will remain active because the stealth dolphin, which is an ability created by Emperor Time, will remain active. And actually, now I think about it, it's probably the reason why Kurapika took out the contacts, because his eyes are going to start hurting at some point because he has Emperor Time on for so long compared to what we usually see it. The fact that Kurapika loses years of his life when it's active, that is crucial when it comes to his character. Kurapika's character, who is a main character of the story. So, that being said, guys and gals, that's it. I am done when it comes to chapter review. When it comes to a pacing standpoint, it was overall okay plus. When it comes to the story, there are a few things going on there when it comes to the overall arc, like the 3 princes trying to get contact with Kurapika, like another bodyguard sent by Benjamin, like the assassin Vincent failing to kill Kurapika or Bill. There are a few things there that have some weight to the story, and overall that's fine, that's good. When it comes to character, it is much simpler than the previous chapter. Oh, much simpler. Because in the previous chapter, you have Benjamin, you have Basilminko, you have some for the 5th prince, you have things that are going on for a lot of characters within the arc itself. But because it is big characterization for Kurapika, a main character, to find out that Kurapika is losing years of his life for every second, 1 hour for every second Emperor Time is up, that is huge, crucial. And I'm going to say that even though it's simpler to the overall story, that has way more substance, that has way more weight to the story. So I'm going to say that character was great. And that being said, the chapter rating for this chapter is going to be a good +2 grade, which is going to be a 7.75 out of 10. So that's it. I'm done. I'm going to see you cats later. Be sure to use a device called ZMouse. You use ZMouse to click, rate the video, to click, subscribe, to click on that bell to join the squad, and of course, comment in the comment section down below using your favorite keyboard. Peace, and have a nice goddamn day.